What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Emerald Crusader live stream. I am your host, Emerald, and I'd like to welcome Nemo. Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate it. So it is Wednesday, which of course means it is time for another installment of Willpower Wednesday. So for those of you who don't know, Green Lantern is one of my favorite superheroes, and his power is all based around willpower. So that informed a lot of me, how I grew up and what I value as a person. So with that said, I wanted to do roughly a half an hour to an hour a week on willpower. Just talking about a story of someone who had a tremendous amount of, or some crazy feat of willpower to inspire myself and others to have more willpower, because we all need it. I mean, we all have goals that we want to achieve and habits, both ones that we want to break and ones that we want to start, and that all starts with willpower. And when you're talking about willpower, you're hard pressed to find a better demonstration of it than the gentleman we are talking about today. And I was surprised that I had never heard of him before I started doing research for this stream. But his name is Dashrath Manjhi. And with that out of the way, I'm going to be butchering a lot of the Indian language and a lot of names today. But this guy, his story is amazing. I mean, if I had to describe him in a nutshell, he is pretty much a living Indian folk hero. Like, people in his society hold him in the same regard as we hold someone like John Henry or something like that. But this guy lived and did it, and his story is crazy. He's prominently now known as the Mountain Man, and he rose to the status of living, breathing Indian folk legend. His story has been the subject of at least one documentary and 7 different dramatic treatments, such as movies and TV shows. His story is one of love, of tragedy, of adversity, and ultimately one of triumph. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's talk a little bit about where he comes from. So, he was born in January of 1929 in a village called Galar in Bihar, India. In 2006, the Ministry of Gaya, one of the country's poorest districts, it's the 250th poorest district out of 640 total districts, and it really has a ton of people living there. Let's see, it says 4.4 million people living there today, and the literacy rate there is 63.67%. And it was and still remains a small village with very few resources. So this guy really comes from poverty, and on top of that, living in that poor area, he was born into a Musahar family, which is considered the lowest rank of India's caste system at the time. So he's not only born into an impoverished village, but he's also the lowest member of society in that village. He was married off early, and because of that, and also because he had a hard time finding work with not being able to read, he left his village to go mine for 7 years in a neighboring village, but he would later return home. And upon his return home, Dashrath fell in love with Faljuni, which ironically, she turned out to be the girl that he was forced to marry as a kid. So, bit of a crazy story, but it turned out that he felt that they were meant for each other after all. And although they were at the bottom of the caste system and didn't have much, they managed to find happiness. Her father reportedly refused to allow his daughter to live with Dashrath because he was jobless at the time. But despite this, they ran away together, and he eventually found work as an agricultural laborer in neighboring villages. And that neighboring village was on the other side of a mountain in Galer. And they would actually go on to have 2 children in 1960. But shortly thereafter, and this story varies, as again it was a poor village with a very low literacy rate, so a lot of this was word of mouth before people wrote it down. But it says that his wife, in an effort to bring him lunch and water at the time being a very scarce and precious resource, she wanted to bring him lunch and water one day, and so she traversed the only path through the mountain that connected the 2 villages. This path was described as narrow and treacherous. While making her trek, she slipped and fell from the mountain, breaking the pot of precious water, as well as sustaining what would be fatal injuries. It was later determined that had she had more immediate access to medical care, she would have actually survived the fall. To Dashrath, the sole reason for his wife's death was because the closest town with a physician in it was over 34 miles away. And again, this is a poor village, so 34 miles without having a car with an injured person is that's just not going to really happen in any immediate fashion. So let's talk about how he reacted to his wife's death. As Dashrath tells it, quote, "That time I was sleeping beside the well. At midnight, I heard a voice from the sky telling me to break the mountain. Since then, I forgot sleep. It was then when he started to plan out how he would go about breaking the mountain as well." His son says that the following morning, he went out and sold their only 3 goats and bought a hammer and chisel. Dashrath then quickly got to work on breaking the mountain with nothing more than these tools and sheer willpower. He started breaking a mountain. Talking about the pot of water that broke when his wife fell, he once said in an interview, "These mountains were there since the beginning of the earth. How many pots have broken over the ages? How many people went thirsty? So I thought, it will be my labor, all right. But how many pots will survive till the end of the earth? How many will be benefited? This was my primary thought." He also said, "People asked me, till what distance will I break?" And he said, pointing from one side of the mountain to the other, "From here to there, I will break everything." They then started calling me mad. They didn't believe me. With a chisel and hammer, I can break a mountain completely. Everybody started calling me mad, a fool, an idiot. He worked diligently, breaking away small portions of the mountain day by day. He eventually had someone make him a larger hammer and a custom chisel that was just gigantic so he could break up larger boulders. These larger boulders, even with this custom chisel, often took him over a month to break through. But after his first success in breaking the first boulder, he says, "I became confident in breaking the whole mountain." And so he went on to work on breaking the mountain for 22 years, eventually clearing a passage that was 160 feet long by 30 feet wide by 25 feet deep. That is that's such gigantic numbers. I went ahead and did the math for everybody. That is 270,000 cubic feet. Now, on average, because I tried to Google it, but I couldn't figure out what these particular mountains are made out of, so I don't have a specific weight. But on average, a square foot of rock weighs about, I think it was 175 pounds. So this means he cleared a total of 23,625 tons of rock. Again, for context, that's 47,250,000 pounds of rock that this guy cleared away with nothing but a rock and a chisel over the course of 22 years. So the road now in the path that he forged would go on to connect 4 different districts to highways, which will shorten the distance. Can't put a measure. Hey, kind of unreal love. Yeah, that's true enough. So he eventually shortened the path by a distance of 25 miles to the closest town with a hospital in it. And again, this was very important because these people don't have cars, so a shortening of 25 miles is, days of walking. That's huge to them. So this is very important because not only will this help in scenarios like the one that tragically took his wife from him, but also with others gaining transportation to get to the broader highway that connects the rest of India. So this really helped out their town tremendously. Also, this gave locals in his village the ability to access water from a well in less than a mile walk, when previously it was almost 10 miles of a walk to get to the well. And this road also was able to connect his village to 2 different police districts, so that helped crime get lower in his village as well. So just with this one act of sheer willpower, he was able to help a town in a bunch of different ways. But he didn't really stop there. So once he became a living folk hero in India, it's really just as important to talk about what he did after that as much as it is to talk about what made him that. Because although he had a lot of fame, he still lived in very humble means. People would often come to the small village to meet with him, expecting him to have a nice house or something like that, and find that he still lived in a mud hut. One day, someone from the Indian government came and talked with him and said that they wanted to fund buying him a house on behalf of the Indian government, and he refused to take him up on the offer unless he was willing to give everyone in his village a house. Shortly thereafter, 33 houses were sanctioned to be built by the Indian government. Also, once he rose to fame, he caught the eye of more politicians in India and was able to ask the head of state for certain things for his village. And he would go on to build a bridge over a wide river that runs through his village, a hospital for his village, and have the road tended so it was a proper drivable road going through town, connecting the path to the rest of the highways. He said, quote, "I was crossing the river with others when I slipped and almost drowned. I then thought, how many must have drowned? Then I started making a bridge on it. Now when the bridge will be constructed, no one will get drowned." He then walked 1,100 miles along the railway to collect money from the government for the bridge that he built for the town. And the town, I think, saw a dozen less deaths a year from people drowning in that particular river because he built a bridge over it. He in order to get to the government in New Delhi, he walked over 2 months to get there. He would end up passing away in New Delhi on August 17th, 2017. Or I'm sorry, 2007. He died of gallbladder cancer. One of the members of the Legislative Assembly, which is essentially Indian Parliament, the representative of his village, said the king used his royal treasures to build the Taj Mahal in memory of his wife. But Dashrath, for the love of his wife, carved a road which is beneficial to all people with just a hammer and a chisel, without using anyone's money. This is the reason I give him even more importance. A very humble man talking about the pot of water that broke when his wife fell. He said in an interview, oh wait, did I already say that? Yes, I did already say that part. Sorry. So he said also in an interview, the philosophy of my life is this: I will alone do the work and millions will benefit from it. And I mean, I think that is probably one of the most honorable life philosophies that I've heard. Sure, I'll say it again. Why not? He said, talking in an interview about when the pot broke when his wife fell, he said, these mountains are there since the beginning of Earth. How many pots have broken over the ages? How many people went thirsty? So I thought, it will be my labor, all right, but how many pots will survive till the end of the earth? How many will be benefited? This was my primary thought. And so that's really his whole driving force behind his will, is not only that he wanted to do it for his wife and so that no one else suffered the same fate of his wife, but he was thinking of future generations and how they would benefit, no one being thirsty. And he often actually got in spats with his family because they were mad at him because he loved them just as much as he loved everybody. He considered his entire village his family, not just his kin. And so there's a video that you can find on it. It's all in Indian, but it's subtitled in English. And so they were just really talking about how little they've done for them personally, and he's actually going on and changing a whole village for generations to come. And again, this is a guy that came from literally nothing with a education as such to where he's illiterate, and he just got up one day and saw how beneficial it would be for everyone and got to work on clearing a path. And I think that's a lesson we can all take from it. I think we can all find a hammer and chisel that we need and clear the path. If you watch my first Wednesday or Willpower Wednesday, it's his I want power is so determined. He knew exactly what he wanted to do, and that informed his I will and I won't power. And he just was like, I won't go to sleep. I will pick up that hammer and chisel every day until my ambitions are complete. And yes, well said. Everything done in love is worth doing. Yep. Well, that's the Thresh Manjhi. I really hope I'm saying his name right because he deserves the respect. And to close out this video, yeah, well, I mean, that's the hard part about empathy, though, Nemo. when you say except for Richard Ramirez, no apology needed. But when you say Richard Ramirez, yeah, I heavily disagree with pretty much every action of his life to the furthest extent. But that doesn't mean that I can discount his being a human and grant him at least the basic kindness of empathy. Or at least try my best to. But yeah, that said, I want to close the stream on a folk song, an Indian folk song sung at his funeral. And before I do that, thanks again for... No, I actually, me and Mandy are planning on watching that tonight. Super excited about it. But yeah, if you like this, I will be back next Wednesday. I am changing the times to 7:30 just because it works out a little bit better for my schedule, but it's still going to be on the same days. So I'll be back next Wednesday at 7:30. I'll be back tomorrow for Thoughtful Thursday, talking about smart stuff, hopefully trying to get smarter. Then Chai Friday is the book club. We're wrapping up the second part of Salem's Lot. So if you're interested in that, tune in. If you're not caught up, don't tune in because it is going to be spoiler heavy. And then on Saturday, we're going to do another Weekend Deep End, which is just a half-hour story about a random cool thing that I found interesting on the internet, whatever it may be. And then on Monday, I will be back for another installment of Music Monday. So thanks for tuning in and enjoy this awesome folk song written about this awesome guy.
गेहलोर घाटी हवे विश्व में महान बबुआ महान बबुआ हो महान बबुआ बाबा दशरथ हवे दुनिया में महान बबुआ अरे बाबा दशरथ जी दिल्ली पैदल गईलन अरे दिल्ली पैदल गईलन पहाड़ सर कैलन अरे गेहलोर के दशरथ बाबा दिल्ली पैदल गईलन दिल्ली पैदल गईलन पहाड़ सर कैलन अरे उनका जानतार सगरो जहान बबुआ बाबा दशरथ हवे दुनिया में रहले जन जन के चहेता रहले शोषित के नेता गरीब जनता के चहेता दिहले दुनिया के सुख और समान बबुआ जिला गया हुए भारत में